Vamos a empezar ahorita. Am I sharing my screen? Can you confirm, please? Great. Well, thanks everyone. Such an honor to start the session today with my presentation. Well, in this presentation, I wanted to talk about how applying concepts of circular economy to small-scale fisheries can bring more profit to fishermen and can improve the well-being of the fishing communities. So first, a very brief. What circular economy basically applied to food basically tries to mimic the regenerating system that already exists in natural systems. So in the case of fisheries, it's quite important because it's estimated that around 30 to 30% of weight of the product that is fished is not used, which is particularly critical for small-scale fisheries that are the source of income for people from countries from the very poor countries, from the developing world, and they also give job and support to many women in the world. And applying circular economy to small-scale fisheries is also supporting the United Nations Sustainable Goals, which is quite relevant, and it just gives us some of the main reasons why this should be pursued. So, well, in this video, I'm going to focus the presentation in basically in the production and utilization of fish silage, which is something that the FAO has been promoting in the fishing communities in the last years. And it is a promising technique because it doesn't require a big investment, and it can be applied in different contexts, but also give more autonomy to the communities. So this is basically a system to reuse and use the waste that is being produced now as a byproduct of fisheries to create some liquid that can be used as a fertilizer or as a feed for livestock. So, well, the information about the process is clearly explained in this manual that is available in the FAO webpage. That is free, so everyone can access to it. And it's the manual on how to turn fish waste into profit and a valuable feeding fertilizer. So, well, the fish silage is basically minced fish byproducts, or means whole fish not suitable for human consumption, with a preservative added to stabilize the mixture. So after the whole process, those byproducts could easily be preserved and transformed into a valuable feed input for aquaculture, for chicken, pork, or other livestock production. It also can be used as a natural fertilizer for crop production. So basically the system is quite simple and consists of 6 main steps: processing the fish to obtain the raw material, raw segregation, grinding material to obtain approximately 1 millimeter particles, then stir, addition of acid, And once the mix is stable, it can be storage as long as years, for periods as long as years, in the best cases. However, producing fish silage is not only a preservation method, it is a mix of hydrolyzed fish protein and micronutrients. So the enzymes mainly from the digestive system of the fish, but also some enzymes from the skin and the muscle breaks down the proteins, and which makes this mixture a very unique and rich product. The addition of acid is quite important since the acidic environment with a pH of 3.5 to 4 is ideal for enzymatic degradation. The temperature is also important because it can speed up the process. In tropical environments, the whole process of hydrolysis can take a few days. In cold environments, it could take weeks, but it's still a very fast, a very quick process. So, well, the uses, due to the relatively low acidity of fish silage, it can be used to feed directly livestock without any prior mixing or treatment. This has been done successfully in the past, and the results show that animals fed with this type of food show higher growth rates, improved health, and reduced mortality, and in the case of farmed fish, like higher productivity. It can be used directly or also as a pellet, as food. Also, it can be used as a fertilizer if it doesn't meet the quality requirements for feed purposes. It's a very good source of nitrogen from the proteins, but also phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and magnesium, particularly from the bone structures, and which are the most trace elements needed for the plants, which makes this mixture very valuable. And the application of the fish silage as a fertilizer can be done in a very simple way, just adding some parts to the irrigation process, the normal irrigation process. So it's quite simple and easy to use. So, well, now I'm gonna share with you an interview that I did with two FAO officers who are leading the project, promoting the use of fish silage in a small community. So I'm gonna share now that interview. And at the end, if you have any question or suggestion, please just let me know. Let me share the screen again.
Hey, you definitely has more idea because when I started working in the FAO in 2017, Yogi was already working a lot of projects regarding fish byproducts utilization as well as in nutrition. And if I remember it right, my first time that I worked with the byproducts and the publication actually is part of the project on AMR or antimicrobial resistance. And regarding the project, the program, we were thinking of using the fish silage technology as a way to reduce fish waste because AMR does affects and causes a lot of fish deaths. And then using fish silage technology and treating it in a certain temperature, we can convert this fish waste into fish silage, which eventually we can use as a feed ingredient or as a fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
I believe fish silage technology already exists like decades ago, but there's the problem on the lack of awareness on the possible use of the technology, as well as on different ways to utilize fish processing byproducts. And because there are several ways to utilize byproducts, not only fish silage, but because the fish silage is a simple way to utilize these products, it doesn't really need sophisticated machineries of equipment. It can only use and rely rely on raw materials as well as the acid. If we're talking about acid hydrolysis, so it's a very simple way to utilize and convert fish processing byproducts into something that is of high value and can be used in different ways, such as feed ingredient as well as fertilizer.
Yeah.
I think for the process or the technology to be sustainable, it needs a market, because we just can't produce and produce and produce fish silage. Otherwise, it will get stuck and then eventually there's no use of it. So I think the cooperation between the fish silage producers as well as the feed industry or the users, even the farmers, is very important in making the technology sustainable and more adaptable and fitting to different communities. Knowing that fish, it's not really a lucrative or high, a very expensive technology, because based on what we did in one of the training we had in the Philippines, we just need the raw materials, a mixer, a mixing tank, and then the acid. So, and the training will not be really intensive. Like, you just have to teach them how to do the proper way to regard, or means the fish weight, the fish byproducts, and then how to put the acid and how to mix it on how to check the pH, because basically it's not so technical process.
Yeah.
The main, how can I say, advantage with fish silage production is that actually you can install, it's not a huge investment. You can process small volumes, you can process big volumes. And if you are, as you said, you only have a few kilos of fish byproducts or waste per day, you can still do it, and the investment will be very low. You can even, you need a grinder. That's maybe the biggest investment. So if it's just a few kilos, you can even use a manual one, and then process it at a very small scale. So the investment is very minimal. Because with the silage, the advantage with that technology is that you just install the small unit where the waste is generated. So you don't transport the waste or the byproduct, you just process it where it is. And when it's finished, that can be stored in a tank. It's not like you have to find a cool place or a cold place to store it. When it's liquefied and the pH is at the right level, it can be stored for months. You don't need to do anything. And then you can transport it wherever. If you transport it to another plant where you further process the silage, eventually to sell it on the open market, to reduce the level of water in it, to make it more concentrated, that's what is done. But you can use it as it is. So you can use it locally for feed purposes or whatever, but you can also further process it and sell it to feed producers, for example. And that's what it's done today. Most of the fish silage produced today is used for feed purposes, and it's a valuable feed. It's not only a way of utilizing the waste or the byproducts, but it is also a product that is highly valuable because it has advantages. And as Omar also mentioned, AMR antimicrobial resistance. One thing is you can actually process the waste or the dead fish or whatever into a valuable product, but the product itself has also some antibacterial properties, because of the organic acids that are used. So in some studies, they have shown that you can reduce the need of using antibiotics, for example. So it has a positive impact as well. The uniqueness with this technology is that actually what you need is a fresh raw material of good quality. So you need to have to install the unit close to where you generate the waste to process. It doesn't matter, much what species or whatever, but you need to be able to grind it and then make sure that you have the enzymes that are naturally in the fish, and then you need to add the acid or eventually use the biological.
My question.
One also factor that we have to consider is the source of raw materials.
Yeah.
Because if you're working on a household level, you might don't have enough raw materials. You might have only some kilos of fish processing byproducts. So it will be just it will be good if it will be a community of fish processors putting all the raw materials together and doing the technology together so that it will be more efficient, I guess, is not only for during the processing but also for storage. And then eventually they can also bargain with food or feed companies for product or marketing of the silage.
Yeah, that's a challenge, because it's thrown into the sea, and because you would rather bring something that you can sell and make more money, instead of carrying all this the heads and the viscera and all. But if you can show that actually this can be an additional economic activity, you can generate income. I think that's the only way. Well, not only way, but one of the main ways of convincing them to do it. And of course, if you have legislation that does not allow you to throw it into the sea, that's also something that, I think there are many advantages, but the main challenge I think is that if you don't know how to use the product, it's easy to produce, easy to make, but you also need to know how to utilize it. And I think that's where the main challenge is, maybe. So one thing is to produce it, which is a simple process. Some of the trainings were carried out, 1 or 2 days, and they have enough knowledge to further, to produce and then further develop the system and adapt it to local conditions. So it's not a complicated issue, but you can say there are 2 main types of fish silage ways of producing it. The principle is very simple. You need, the fish waste, the fish byproducts, and you need the viscera, the intestine, because you need the enzymes.
The enzymes.
They are the ones that actually produce and to hydrolyze the proteins and convert it into a fish silage. The acid you add is more for preservation. So you lower the pH to a level so you don't encourage any bacterial growth or organisms that can grow, can be bacteria or yeast or whatever. But there is another way, the more biological process, where instead of adding the acid, you add bacteria that produce acid, mainly lactic acid. But then you also need to add, carbohydrates to feed the bacteria. You need to make sure that the right bacteria are growing and not the bad ones. So that's a process that takes longer time. And requires more. You have to look after it much more. The simplest is if you can add the acid directly, and you jump the most complicated step. But it's also, in some countries it can be difficult to get the acid, and you need to handle acid, and that's also maybe a factor that you have to take into account, that you have to be careful. Just that adding the acid to the silage, when it's added and mixed into there is no danger, but just that step you have to be a little bit careful, I think. But it's very simple and it's very low cost, and the product is excellent, so it's not, and it can generate employment. We reduce the impact on the environment, and you get an excellent product that can be used in. But of course, you need to convince the fisherman to bring the raw material onshore, and then they will not do it for free, I believe. So you have to be able to collaborate between the fishermen, the ones that are processing it, so they can all benefit from it. And I think the one of the advantages is that you can do this at a very small scale or bigger scale. And if you have an association or whatever, you say, okay, we install a small unit here, and the fishermen, they provide the raw material, and then they share the cost and they share the income in some way. And because if there's a market that is willing to buy the product, the idea of producing fish silage is one thing, but then, as you say, we need to also convince the users, and that could be fish farmers, it can be farmers, but then you also need to convince them. So you have to actually show them that this has an advantage, maybe economically, and also on the growth of the animals. It's by including some fish silage in, for example, in feed for pigs or poultry, it has shown to reduce mortality because of the one could be the antibacterial properties of including some silage. But you should not only use fish silage. It should be like an ingredient, like it's not like the more the better, but to find the right amount that actually gives the positive effects in the feed. So that one you need to do studies, and you need to convince the ones. Somebody has to be the first one. Nobody will jump on it before you have showed, and then little by little, I think farmers they will be convinced that actually this is something that will benefit me. And I think that's the hardest step. To produce it is not difficult. To have the product ready, but you need to convince them that including it in your feed, it can on one side replace some of the fish meal, which is a relatively expensive ingredient, and then you can and when you see the benefits, I think then you will get more higher demand for the product. But I think that's the biggest, the most difficult part of the whole how can I say idea. So there has been an increasing interest on where we've been doing various trainings on fish silage, even during the last year with the pandemic. We have not been physically been able to be there, but we carried out some workshops, both theoretical and practical ones, but online, and it has worked out. So it's possible actually to do things, and it will be interesting to see how it will eventually evolve. And because very often you have a workshop and everybody's very enthusiastic, and then after there's nobody to follow up, and it stops there. So you need actually to follow it up and with studies, how to utilize it and explain. You need to explain not only that it's possible, but why is this a product that is so unique. You do analysis and show them, well, this is actually is rich in protein. This is a hydrolyzed protein, so it's a pre-digested protein. So it's even the benefits of using it in some aspects is higher than using, for example, fish meal, because it's pre-digested. It's mainly peptides and amino acids, in addition to all the minerals and the fats.
So what about pilot projects, just to show people the benefits and convince all the
I think that's the way we need to go, and that's where also with on the Galapagos, they are now being able to produce it, and they will go they are now taking the further step with on one organization which is Active Conservation International. They were the one that asked us to support their activities in Galapagos on showing how to produce it, and then they are taking it one step further on also how to use it.
That's great, fantastic, especially in those environments like islands, that like the Galapagos, that it has so many regulations because of the conservation status, that there are so many products that cannot be imported, and so the idea is that most food is produced in the island. with very environmental friendly fertilizers. So yeah, it's fantastic that they are trying there.
Oh, so this is one of the main reasons I think Galapagos could be a good example, because you say you cannot import or export any, well, so you have to try to use what's already there. And that's what was maybe the main idea when we started this, is the fisheries resources are limited. So let's try to make 100% use out of it. You know, not only taking the fillets and eat them and the rest are not used. Often in bigger processing plants, of course, they process maybe the byproducts or the waste into fish meal, but that's requires a high investment and it requires high volumes, you know, in order.
I think I've used my time, the 30 minutes. So the whole interview for the two officers is quite large, and they gave me a lot of inputs about the production. So I would be happy to share the whole interview, and I have also interviewed some other people working in this topic. So I would be happy to share that with, I don't know if with Too Big to Ignore or to another platform. But so yeah, that's all. If you have any question. No? So I think I just hand the presentation to the next person, right?